Okay, picture this. You're sitting in a massive, packed stadium. The energy is absolutely electric. Up on the main stage, professional esports players are battling it out for literally millions of dollars. But as you look closer, you notice something is off. One team is wearing these sleek, specialized red headsets. They aren't talking into microphones. They aren't shouting callouts. Instead, they are completely silent, syncing their brainwaves and coordinating attacks telepathically. They're moving with a precision that just doesn't look human. Meanwhile, the team across from them, relying on good old-fashioned talking, looks totally helpless. Now, here's the wild part. This isn't some crazy scene from a sci-fi movie. This is the fast-approaching reality of the $1.8 billion esports industry.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are walking straight into a fascinating and, frankly, pretty terrifying ethical gray area. We're diving deep into the future of doping in esports and what happens when the line between human skill and machine enhancement completely vanishes. Honestly, by the end of this, you might just question everything you know about fair play. Here's our game plan for today. We'll start with how chemical doping kicked things off. Then we're going to level up to neurotechnologies, literally hacking the brain. We'll look at the massive legal headache regulators are facing, explore a future where humans play against actual cyborgs, and finally, run through some practical solutions to keep the competition real. All right, let's jump right into part 1. Doping enters the gaming world.
So this whole conversation really started snowballing back in 2015. Pro Counter-Strike player Corey Semphis Friesen was doing an interview, and he just casually dropped a massive bombshell. He flat out admitted that his entire team used Adderall during a major tournament, ESL One Katowice. It was a huge wake-up call. Suddenly, the esports world had to face the reality that performance-enhancing drugs weren't just for weightlifters. They were in the server, too.
And you might be wondering, why Adderall? Well, it makes total sense when you look at the stats. Adderall is a prescription med for ADHD. It boosts dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain. But for a pro gamer, it cranks up sustained focus and attention by an incredible 35%. But here's the real kicker: reaction time. It drops a player's reaction time by 28%. To put that into perspective, it takes you from a standard human reaction time of around 180 milliseconds straight down to an elite 130 milliseconds. In a fast-paced shooter, that tiny fraction of a second is literally the difference between life and death. On top of all that, it bumps up working memory by 42%, and the effects can last up to 8 hours. That's enough juice to carry a player through an entire, grueling day of high-stakes matches without ever losing their mental edge. It's a massive advantage. And it's not just Adderall, there's a whole menu of these things. Modafinil gives players hours of total alertness with zero fatigue. Then there's propranolol, which is actually a blood pressure med, but gamers use it to completely kill hand tremors and tournament anxiety so their aim stays dead on. Even caffeine is heavily regulated in some circles, capped at 200 milligrams. The rest of these, they create huge invisible advantages and are strictly banned unless a player has a specific medical exemption. Now, how is this different from traditional sports doping? Well, think about steroids or growth hormones. You can physically see the massive muscle growth, and you can easily test for it. But in esports, the doping is entirely invisible. It's happening on a microscopic level inside the brain. You can't just look at someone and tell they're processing information 50 milliseconds faster. But in games like Valorant or Counter-Strike, that invisible edge is everything. Which brings us to Section 2, Neurotech. Literally hacking the brain. If popping pills was version 1.0, we are now firmly stepping into version 2.0 territory, hardware. Get this, at CES 2026, Neurable and HyperX showed off an EE gaming headset. It doesn't just pump audio into your ears, it actually reads your brainwaves in real time. The creators claim it can shave 43 milliseconds off your reaction time, boost your accuracy by 3%, and even alert you the second you start getting mentally fatigued. So, if a headset is just reading your existing brainwaves to optimize your play, is that actually cheating? It's a total ethical gray area. But hold on, because it gets way more intense than just reading brainwaves. Enter TDCS, or transcranial direct current stimulation. This involves literally zapping specific parts of a player's brain with 1 to 2 milliamps of electricity to change how the neurons fire. Zap the motor cortex, your physical aiming mechanics get better. Zap the prefrontal cortex, your strategy and decision-making level up. Players are physically altering their brains with electricity. And the crazy part is, nobody really knows the long-term health risks of doing this for years.
And that leads us right to the absolute peak of this wild escalation: brain-computer interfaces, or BCI. Think along the lines of Neuralink. This is a direct, hardwired connection from your brain straight to the game. No mouse, no keyboard, you just think, and it happens. Back in 2018, the Institute for the Future actually mapped out a scenario where a team dominated using this kind of telepathic mind sync tech. Today, that sci-fi scenario is becoming real, promising sub-50 millisecond reaction times that a natural human simply cannot beat. Moving on to Section 3, the legal deadlock against all this rapid innovation. So, what are the regulators doing about this? Well, if you look at the banned substance list from the International Esports Federation, it's super clear on chemicals. Stimulants, narcotics, cannabinoids, beta blockers, all banned. But there is a glaring blind spot. There is zero mention of hardware or neurotech. Why? Because when these rules were written, nobody imagined a gamer plugging their actual brain into a USB port to get a competitive edge. And honestly, even the chemical rules they do have are kind of broken. Look at this massive loophole. It's called a therapeutic use exemption, or TUE, and it lets players use banned drugs if a doctor signs off on it. In some pro leagues, up to 40% of players have a TUE for Adderall. Now compare that to the general population, where ADHD rates sit at around 5%. So do almost half of all esports pros just happen to have ADHD, or is this medical loophole being massively abused? Which leaves the whole industry staring down a near impossible question. How do you catch an invisible cheat? Let's say a player uses one of those TDCS devices to zap their brain for a massive boost a few days before a huge tournament. That electrical charge leaves absolutely zero trace in their blood. No trace in their urine. Trying to test for a brain zap is literally like trying to catch a ghost. Standard anti-doping tests are completely useless here. Section 4. Cyborgs versus humans. What does the future actually look like? Because regulators are so stuck, people are tossing around some pretty radical scenarios to fix this. One major idea, which pulls inspiration from the whole enhanced games concept, is to just split esports into two completely separate leagues. You'd have a natural league with 100% pure human skill and super strict testing, and then an enhanced league where neurotech and drugs are totally allowed. A literal cyborg competition. But the risk here is huge. If the cyborgs are playing at insane, superhuman speeds, the natural league might just be completely forgotten as a boring second-tier show. Let's be real. A total free-for-all sounds like a mess. A much more realistic fix is a smart regulation framework. Basically, you organize everything into 3 clear tiers. Tier 1 is standard gear and maybe your morning coffee. Totally fine. Tier 2 requires strict medical licenses for legit prescriptions and approved neurofeedback headsets. And Tier 3? That's the hard line. Direct brain-computer interfaces and electrical brain zapping are strictly banned. It finally gives everyone a clear boundary of what is fair play and what is just science fiction. All right, finally, Section 5. Practical solutions to actually save competition today. So, what can everyone actually do right now? Here's a quick checklist. First, bodies like the IESF need to update their rulebooks today to explicitly ban unregulated neurotech. Second, the esports teams themselves have to step up. Stop turning a blind eye to the pills and start giving players real psychological support to handle the crazy tournament stress. And third, the players need to remember that basic stuff, like actually getting sleep, eating right, and exercising, are the best, most sustainable performance enhancers out there. And for emerging esports markets around the world, like Iran, which the source data specifically highlighted, there is a golden opportunity to build the system right from day one. Set up a specialized esports federation, work directly with the health ministry to monitor these drugs, teach kids in schools about the dangers of neurodoping, and put real legal penalties in place for the cheaters. Get ahead of the curve. So as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with one massive, lingering question. Cybernetic doping is no longer just a theory. It is happening right now. We are standing at a historic crossroads for competitive gaming. Are we going to step up, draw the hard lines, and protect the raw, beautiful spirit of human competition? Or are we just going to sit back and watch the birth of cybernetic games, where machines finally take over human sports for good? The clock is ticking.